Hi, husband left her alone in the car while she was having a baby. Enjoy listening your story.
My husband left me in the car at 6:47 in the morning while I was having contractions 6 minutes apart, grabbed his fishing gear from the back seat and told me the hospital was only 12 minutes away. I could handle it. Then he got into his father's Chevy Silverado, and I watched the red taillights disappear down Mulberry Street while another contraction ripped through my body. That was the morning I finally understood who I had married. My name is Destiny Dickerson. I was 29 years old, and I was about to give birth to my first child completely alone. Let me back up a little because you need to understand how I ended up in that Ford Explorer, gripping the dashboard, watching my husband choose a fishing trip over the birth of his daughter. I met Brent Holloway 4 years ago at a friend's backyard barbecue in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. He was charming, attentive, and had this way of making me feel like the only person in the room. We got married after a year of dating. I kept my last name, Dickerson, because my father had passed away 2 years before the wedding, and I wanted to carry a piece of him with me. Brent said he understood. Looking back, I think that was the first red flag I ignored. He understood a lot of things he never actually accepted. Brent worked as the operations manager at his father's plumbing supply company, Holloway Pipe and Fixture. Fancy title for a job that basically meant doing whatever his daddy told him to do. His father, Gerald Holloway, was 61, a widower who'd lost his wife to cancer when Brent was 15. I felt sorry for Gerald at first. Losing your wife, raising a teenage son alone, that's hard. But somewhere along the way, Gerald's grief turned into something else: control. He kept Brent on an emotional leash so tight the poor man couldn't breathe without checking if his father approved. And then there were the fishing trips. Every Saturday since Brent was 12 years old, he and Gerald went fishing together. Every single Saturday. They'd never missed one. Not for holidays, not for emergencies, not even for our wedding. We had to move the ceremony to Sunday because Gerald had already reserved their spot at Lake Raystown. I thought it was sweet at first, this father-son tradition. I told myself it was a sign of family values. What I didn't realize was that I would never, ever come before those fishing trips. Not once. Not even when I was literally bringing their family's next generation into the world. The signs were there before that March morning, of course. They always are. I just didn't want to see them. A few months before my due date, I started noticing money missing from our joint checking account. Small amounts at first. $150 here, $200 there. When I asked Brent about it, he waved me off. Business expenses, he said. You wouldn't understand the supply chain business. I work as a medical billing specialist at Keystone Orthopedic Associates. I understand numbers just fine, but I let it go because I was tired and pregnant and wanted to believe my husband wasn't lying to my face. My mother, Colleen, warned me about this marriage. 3 years ago, right before the wedding, she sat me down at her kitchen table in Scranton and said she had concerns. She said Brent seemed like a nice man, but a nice man who couldn't stand up to his father wasn't really a man at all. I told her she was being unfair. I told her she didn't know him like I did. I told her love would be enough. Mothers are annoying like that, always being right about things you don't want to hear. So there I was, that Saturday morning in March, 9 months pregnant, contractions getting stronger, sitting in the passenger seat of our car because Brent was supposed to drive me to the hospital. Supposed to. Instead, he stood in our driveway with his fishing rod in one hand and his tackle box in the other, telling me his father was already at the lake and couldn't wait. He said women had been giving birth for thousands of years. He said I was strong. He said 12 minutes wasn't that far. Then he kissed my forehead and got in his father's truck. I sat there for a full minute after they drove away. Not because I couldn't move. The contractions were painful but manageable at that point. I sat there because I genuinely could not believe what had just happened. My brain was trying to process the fact that my husband, the father of my child, had actually left me to drive myself to the hospital while in labor. It felt like a bad dream, like a sick joke. Like something that happened to other women. Not to me, but it was happening to me. And I had 2 choices: fall apart or drive. I drove. The 12 minutes to Williamsport Hospital felt like 12 hours. By the time I pulled into the emergency lot, my contractions were 4 minutes apart and getting worse. I parked crooked across 2 spaces and didn't care. Let them tow me. Let them give me a ticket. I had bigger problems. I called my sister Janelle from the parking lot, sobbing between contractions. Janelle is 36, works as a paralegal at a family law firm in Philadelphia, and has never liked Brent. She answered on the second ring, and I could barely get the words out. She didn't ask questions. She just said she was getting in her car, and she'd be there as fast as she could. Philadelphia to Williamsport is about 2.5 hours. She made it in 2, but first I had to check myself in, alone. The humiliation of that experience is something I'll never forget. The intake nurse asked for my emergency contact, and I wrote N-A. She asked where the baby's father was, and I said he was unavailable. She and the other nurse exchanged a look. That look women give each other when they understand something without words. One of them, a kind woman in her 50s named Rita, squeezed my hand and said, "Honey, you're stronger than you know." I filled out my own insurance forms between contractions. I work in medical billing. I process insurance claims for a living. So there I was, in active labor, writing down authorization codes and policy numbers because I knew exactly which ones they'd need. If that isn't the most ridiculous irony of my life, I don't know what is. At least I didn't have to call my own office to verify coverage. Small mercies. You know what the worst part was? Even then, even sitting in that hospital bed with monitors strapped to my belly and no husband in sight, I checked my phone. 17 texts to Brent, all marked as read. He had seen them, every single one. He just hadn't responded. He was too busy watching his fishing line. Rita came back to check on me and asked if there was anyone else she could call. I looked at my phone, at those 17 unanswered messages, and something inside me shifted. Not broke, shifted. Like a door unlocking. Like a part of me I'd kept quiet for 3 years finally waking up. No, I told her. There's no one else to call. But that wasn't entirely true. There was someone. There was me. And I was about to find out exactly how strong that someone could be. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every single comment and I appreciate every one of you. Thank you so much for being here with me. Now, where was I? Oh yes, in labor, alone, having the time of my life. 11 hours. That's how long it took to bring my daughter into the world. 11 hours of contractions, breathing exercises, and nurses telling me I was doing great while I contemplated every life choice that had led me to this moment. First-time mothers often have longer labors, they told me. This is normal, they said. Everything is progressing beautifully. Then, around hour 6, everything stopped being beautiful. Lily May's heart rate dropped during a contraction. Not a little, a lot. Monitors started beeping. 3 nurses rushed into the room so fast I thought the floor might collapse. The doctor appeared out of nowhere, talking about fetal distress and emergency interventions and possible cesarean section. I was terrified, absolutely terrified. Not for me, for my baby, for this little person I hadn't even met yet, but already loved more than anything. I grabbed my phone and texted Brent, "Baby in distress, might need emergency surgery, please come." 20 minutes later, 20 minutes, he responded. "I'm sure the docs have it handled. Dad says the base are really biting today. Keep me posted." I read that text 3 times. I screenshot it. I didn't know why at the time. Instinct, maybe. Some part of me already building a case I didn't know I'd need. The base are really biting. My daughter's heart rate was dropping, doctors were preparing for emergency surgery, and my husband was worried about fish. I learned something about myself in that moment. I learned that I could feel heartbroken and furious at the exact same time. I also learned that I could push both of those feelings down and focus on what mattered, getting my baby out safely. Lily May stabilized, no surgery needed, and at 5:47 that evening, after 11 hours of labor, she came into the world screaming. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, perfect, absolutely perfect. I cried when they put her on my chest, cried from relief, from joy, from exhaustion, from the strange loneliness of experiencing the most important moment of my life without my partner there to share it. I named her Lily May Dickerson, my last name, not his. Some decisions make themselves. Janelle arrived at 6:30. Exactly 45 minutes after Lily was born. She burst through the door looking like she'd driven 100 miles an hour the whole way, which she probably had. She didn't say anything at first, just hugged me, then looked at Lily May, then hugged me again. When she finally spoke, all she said was, "Where is he?" I shook my head. She understood. She held my daughter while I finally let myself rest, and for the first time all day, the room felt like it had love in it. Brent showed up at 8:52 p.m. I know the exact time because I was watching the clock, wondering if he'd make it before midnight. He walked in, sunburned and smiling, smelling like lake water, fish guts, and Coors Light. He didn't bring flowers. He brought a teddy bear from the gas station. I know it was from the gas station because the price tag was still attached. $7.99. I did the math later. That's approximately 68 cents per hour he was gone. My daughter's first gift from her father valued her at less than $1 an hour. Quite the investment. "Sorry, babe," he said. "The fish were really biting and Dad needed help hauling in the cooler. But look, she's beautiful. And you did great." I did great. Like I'd completed a school project or finished a 5K. Janelle had to leave the room. I heard her in the hallway, taking deep breaths, probably counting to 10 so she wouldn't come back in and say something that would get her arrested. That night, while I was trying to figure out breastfeeding for the first time, Brent's phone rang. Gerald. Not calling to congratulate us, calling to confirm next Saturday's fishing trip. Brent took the call right there in the hospital room, 10 feet from his newborn daughter, and I heard Gerald's voice through the speaker. "Proud of you, son. Women are tough." She handled it. That's what they do. Brent hung up and told me his dad said congratulations. Gerald hadn't said congratulations. I'd heard the entire conversation, but I was too exhausted to argue, too exhausted to do anything but close my eyes and wonder how I'd ended up here. 3 weeks later, the hospital bill arrived. $23,847 after insurance. I went to check our joint savings account to set up a payment plan, expecting to find the $18,000 we'd carefully saved over the past 2 years. The balance was $3,200, almost $15,000, gone, vanished. When I asked Brent, he got defensive. His father needed a loan for the business, he said. Inventory issues, cash flow problems. Gerald would pay it back. I asked to see the paperwork. "What paperwork?" Brent said. "It's family. We don't need paperwork. No promissory note, no repayment timeline, no documentation of any kind. Just my husband giving away our savings to his father while I was pregnant without telling me, without asking me, without even considering that it might be wrong. You know what's funny? Not funny, haha. Funny, strange. Nothing says magical bonding moment like your husband discussing fishing lures while you're trying to figure out breastfeeding. I remember sitting there, Lily Mae struggling to latch, Brent on the phone with his dad talking about what bait works best for largemouth bass, and thinking, this is my life now. This is what I chose. This is the man I married. But the real kick in the teeth came 2 weeks later. I was doing laundry. Because of course I was doing laundry, I did everything in that house, and I found a receipt crumpled in the pocket of Brent's fishing jacket, Lakeside Marine and Recreation in Huntington, $4,600, deposit on a fishing boat, dated 3 weeks before Lily was born. The exact same week, Brent told me we couldn't afford to fix the broken heater in the nursery. We couldn't afford a $200 heater repair for our baby's room, but he had $4,600 for a boat deposit. I stood there in the laundry room, holding that receipt, listening to Lily Mae cry in her nursery, the one with the broken heater, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, something quieter, something more dangerous. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I smoothed out the receipt, took a picture of it with my phone, and put it back in his pocket exactly where I found it. I didn't know what I was going to do with that information yet, but I knew I was going to do something. And I knew he wasn't going to see it coming. I went back to work at the end of May, about 10 weeks after Lily Mae was born. Maternity leave was technically 12 weeks, but I needed the money. More importantly, I needed access to a computer and printer without Brent looking over my shoulder. Because I had a new project now, a personal project. I called it figuring out exactly how badly my husband had screwed me over. Turns out I'm an excellent forensic accountant. Who knew? Medical billing experience really does transfer well to investigating your own husband's financial betrayal. Very versatile skill set. I should put it on my resume. Every lunch break, while my coworkers ate sandwiches and scrolled through social media, I sat in my car in the parking lot and went through our bank records. I'd requested 2 full years of statements from our joint account. What I found made my stomach drop so hard I thought I might be sick. The pattern was clear once I laid it all out. Year 1 of our marriage, small amounts, $150 here, $200 there, $350 once, business expenses, he'd said. Just helping Dad with inventory. I barely noticed at the time because the amounts were small and I trusted him. That's the funny thing about trust. It makes you blind to the obvious. Year 2. The amounts grew. $500 in March, $800 in May, $1,200 in August. I noticed, but I believed his excuses. Cash flow problems at the business, supply chain issues, temporary loan. He'd handle it. The last 6 months before Lily was born, everything accelerated. $2,000 in October, $3,500 in December, $4,100 in February, large transfers, always to Holloway Pipe and Fixture LLC, always without my knowledge or consent. I added it all up 3 times because I couldn't believe the number. $67,340. $67,000 gone. Over 28 months from an account that had both our names on it. Money that was supposed to be for our future, our daughter's future, our life together. And he'd just given it away to his father without telling me, without asking. Like I was an inconvenience to be managed rather than a partner to be consulted. I sat in my car and cried for about 5 minutes. Then I wiped my face, drank some cold coffee, and got back to work. Not my job work, my investigation work, because I wasn't done digging yet. The boat receipt had been bothering me. $4,600 was a lot for a deposit. I wanted to know what it was buying. So the following Saturday, while Brent was, where else, at the lake with his father, I drove to Lakeside Marine and Rec in Huntington. Lily Mae was strapped into her car seat, babbling happily, completely unaware that her mother was about to do some light reconnaissance. I walked into the showroom and pretended to be interested in buying a boat. Nice young salesman, very helpful, showed me all the options. I casually mentioned that a friend had recently ordered something, last name Holloway maybe, and asked what model he'd gotten. The salesman lit up. Oh yeah, he remembered that order. Great choice. Let me pull up the details. 2 minutes later, I was looking at the paperwork for a 2024 Tracker Pro, Team 195TXW. Fully loaded, total price, $38,500. The $4,600 was just the deposit. There was a $33,900 loan on top of it. But here's the part that really got me. Registered owner, Brent Allen Holloway. Not Gerald, not the business, Brent, personally. My husband had bought himself a $38,000 fishing boat with money from our joint account and a loan co-signed by his father, and he'd never mentioned it to me once. Not when he said we couldn't afford the nursery heater. Not when I asked about the missing savings. Not ever. I thanked the salesman, told him I'd think about it, and walked back to my car on legs that didn't feel entirely stable. I sat in the driver's seat and looked at Lily Mae in the rearview mirror. She smiled at me, that gummy, innocent smile that babies give when they have no idea what's happening around them. I smiled back. Then I called my sister. Janelle listened to everything without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that changed the trajectory of my entire life. She said, "I know an attorney. Family law, specializes in hidden assets and financial fraud. Her name is Patricia Okonkwo. They call her the closer. She hasn't lost a contested divorce in 6 years." I wrote down the number, but I wasn't ready to call yet. First, I needed more information. Janelle, bless her paralegal heart, helped me pull public records for Holloway Pipe and Fixture LLC. What we found was worse than I'd imagined. Brent wasn't just an employee at his father's company. He was listed as 50% owner, filed 18 months ago. He'd never told me, which meant that whatever debts the business had, whatever liabilities, whatever tax problems, Brent was personally responsible for half of it. I also got access to our phone records. I'm the account holder on our family plan, so it was easy. Brent and Gerald talked 3 to 4 hours every single day. Every day. sometimes more. But it wasn't the call logs that gutted me. It was the text messages. Gerald referred to me as that woman in at least a dozen texts. 2 days before I gave birth, Gerald texted Brent, "Don't let her guilt you into skipping Saturday. She's playing you. Women always exaggerate these things." The day after Lily was born, Gerald wrote, "Proud of you for standing your ground, son. She needs to learn she's not your priority. Family is. Family is. As if I wasn't family. As if our daughter wasn't family. As if the only family that mattered was the Holloway bloodline, and I was just some inconvenient woman who'd wandered into their lives and started making demands." I read those texts in my car during my lunch break. I cried again, and then, like before, I stopped. Because crying wasn't going to fix anything. Crying wasn't going to protect my daughter. Crying wasn't going to get back the $67,000 my husband had stolen from our future. But preparation might. My mother moved in with us that week. Colleen Dickerson, 63 years old, retired school nurse. 5'4" and absolutely not someone you want to mess with. She said she was there to help with the baby. We both knew she was there because I'd told her what I'd found, and she wasn't about to let her daughter face this alone. She never said "I told you so." Not once. She just helped. Changed diapers. Did dishes. Held Lily May when I needed to work late on my research. Made dinner. Listened when I needed to vent. That restraint. Not pointing out that she'd warned me about Brent 3 years ago was its own kind of gift. Maybe the best gift she could have given me. I thought about my grandmother a lot during this time. Lillian May Dickerson, the woman Lily was named after. Grandma Lily had raised 4 kids alone after her husband died in a factory accident in 1962. She never complained, never remarried, just did what needed to be done every single day for years. She used to tell me that Dickerson women were made of stronger stuff than most people realized. We just didn't advertise it. I was finally starting to understand what she meant. I became a forensic accountant on my lunch breaks. Never thought my medical billing skills would transfer so well to investigating my own husband. I also used to think I was bad at math. Turns out, I'm excellent at math. I just needed the right motivation. Nothing sharpens your arithmetic skills like discovering your husband is a thief. On a Tuesday afternoon in late June, while Brent was at his father's shop planning their next fishing trip, I finally called Patricia Okonkwo. I told her everything. The hospital, the fishing trips, the money, the boat, the text messages, the business ownership, all of it. She listened without interrupting, asked a few clarifying questions, and then was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, she said 5 words that changed everything. "You have an excellent case." Patricia Okonkwo's office was on the 3rd floor of a brick building in downtown Harrisburg, about an hour's drive from Williamsport. The elevator was slow, the carpet was worn, and the waiting room had magazines from 2019. None of that mattered. What mattered was the woman behind the desk. Patricia was 44 with close-cropped gray hair and reading glasses that she wore on a chain around her neck, like a weapon she might deploy at any moment. She'd been a forensic accountant for 12 years before going to law school, and she switched careers after her own bad divorce. Her office walls were covered with framed photos of her 2 teenage sons and certificates from various legal associations. Her desk was buried under case files. She looked like someone who worked 80 hours a week and loved every minute of it. She charged $350 an hour. I nearly choked when she told me, but then she said something that made me stay. She said she offered payment plans for cases she believed in, and after reviewing my documentation, the bank statements, the boat receipt, the text messages, the business records, she believed in mine. She smiled when she finished reading, not a friendly smile. The smile of someone who sees victory on the horizon and can't wait to get there. "Let's talk about what you're entitled to," she said. The discovery phase of my divorce revealed things even I hadn't expected. Patricia subpoenaed the financial records for Holloway Pipe and Fixture LLC, and what came back was a disaster. The business owed $134,000 in back taxes, 3 years of what Patricia politely called creative accounting, what the IRS would call fraud. Multiple vendors were owed money. Suppliers had cut them off. The company was technically insolvent, surviving only on cash infusions. Cash infusions from where, you might ask? from my joint checking account, from the $67,000 my husband had been funneling to his father for over 2 years. Our savings had been keeping Gerald's failing business alive, while I thought we were building a future together. And here's where it got really interesting. As 50% owner of Holloway Pipe and Fixture, that ownership stake Brent had never bothered to mention to me, he was personally liable for half of everything, half of the back taxes, half of the vendor debts, half of the entire financial catastrophe his father had created. Patricia pulled off her reading glasses and let them dangle on their chain. "Your husband," she said, "is in very serious trouble, and he doesn't even know it yet." The house was our biggest asset. We'd bought it for $285,000 3 years ago, right after we got married. The down payment was $35,000, a gift from my parents. My mother, Colleen, and my late father, Howard, had given us that money to help us start our lives together. I had the canceled check. I had the gift letter, which specifically stated the money was intended for my down payment contribution. Patricia's eyes lit up when she saw those documents. In Pennsylvania, she explained, gifts to one spouse can be treated as separate property under certain circumstances. That down payment documentation changes everything. You're not just entitled to half the equity. You have a strong claim to the full $35,000, plus your share of the appreciation. Current equity in the house after the mortgage, approximately $67,000. Between the down payment reimbursement and my share of the rest, I was looking at walking away with a significant sum. Not rich, but enough to start over. And then there was the boat. That $38,500 fishing boat had been purchased with a $4,600 deposit from our joint account, marital funds. Under Pennsylvania law, I was entitled to half its value. Patricia explained that if Brent couldn't afford to buy me out, the court could order the boat sold. The proceeds would be split. Given Brent's impending financial problems, there was no way he could come up with that money. The fishing boat that was more important than his daughter's nursery heater might end up being sold to pay his ex-wife. I'm not saying karma is real, but I'm also not saying it isn't. Patricia advised me to open a separate checking account in my name only. Perfectly legal, she assured me. Married people have the right to their own accounts. I started depositing my paychecks there instead of our joint account. Every 2 weeks, another $1,200 going somewhere. Brent couldn't touch it. I also made copies of everything. Tax returns for the past 3 years, bank statements going back to the beginning of our marriage, the deed to our house, both car titles, every text message between Brent and Gerald that I could access. I kept the originals in their usual places and hid the copies in a box in my mother's closet in Scranton. And I started keeping a journal, not a diary of my feelings. I didn't have time for that. A log, dates, times, and facts. Every time Brent chose fishing over his daughter, I wrote it down. May 3rd, Brent left at 5 a.m. for fishing. Lily Mae had a fever all night. Temperature reached 101.2. I handled it alone. He came home at 7 p.m., asked if she was feeling better, then went to bed. May 10th, asked Brent to skip fishing for Lily's baptism at St. Mark's. He said Gerald already reserved their spot at the lake. Baptism moved to Sunday. May 17th. Brent came home at 9 p.m. Lily Mae had been crying for 2 hours with colic. I asked where he'd been. He said I wouldn't understand. It's a father-son thing. I have his daughter. I understand plenty. May 24th, Brent transferred $1,800 to Holloway Pipe and Fixture. I found the notification on our banking app. When I asked about it, he said it was none of my business. Our joint account? None of my business. You know what's surprisingly easy? Hiding things from someone who doesn't pay attention to you. I could have been planning a surprise party. I could have been learning to speak Mandarin. I could have been training for a marathon. Instead, I was preparing to divorce him. And he noticed exactly as much as he noticed everything else about my life, which is to say, nothing at all. He never asked why I was working late, never wondered why my mother had moved in, never questioned why I seemed distant. He was too busy thinking about his next fishing trip to notice his wife was planning her escape. I used to spend my evenings watching true crime documentaries. You know, the ones where the wife always seems to know something the police don't. Now, I was living my own investigation. Turns out I'm much better at being the detective than I ever expected. Although, to be fair, my husband wasn't exactly a criminal mastermind, more of a criminal regular mind. The bar was not high. Patricia and I decided on a filing strategy. In Pennsylvania, you can file for divorce at any time, but the timing matters. She suggested filing on a Friday afternoon, as close to the courthouse closing time as possible. That way, Brent couldn't file any counter motions or emergency requests until Monday. It would give me the entire weekend to execute my plan. Friday, July 26th, Patricia filed at 4:47 p.m., 13 minutes before the courthouse closed. She filed for divorce on grounds of indignities, Pennsylvania's legal term for treatment that makes the marriage intolerable. She filed for full legal and physical custody of Lily May. She filed for child support based on our income differential. She filed for equitable distribution of assets, including reimbursement of the $35,000 down payment. She filed for her fair share of the fishing boat's value. Everything was in motion. Now came the hardest part, acting normal for one more night. Friday evening, I made dinner. Spaghetti with meat sauce, Brent's favorite. We ate together, watched some TV, went to bed early. He fell asleep by 10. I lay next to him, staring at the ceiling, running through my checklist. 2 suitcases packed and hidden in the garage. Lily May's car seat already installed in my car. Important documents, already at my mother's house. Wedding ring, ready to leave behind. At 5 o'clock Saturday morning, Brent's alarm went off. Fishing day. He kissed my forehead while I pretended to sleep. "I'll be back tonight," he whispered. "Have a good day." I kept my eyes closed until I heard Gerald's truck pull into the driveway, until I heard Brent loading his gear into the back, until I heard the engine start and the tires crunch on gravel as they drove away. Then I opened my eyes. It was time. Saturday, July 27th, 5:15 a.m. I moved fast but calm. I'd rehearsed this in my mind 100 times over the past month. Every step planned, every action deliberate. No panic, no second guessing, just execution. 2 suitcases came out of the garage. One with my clothes and essentials, one with everything Lily May would need for the next few weeks. I loaded them into my car, a 2018 Nissan Rogue that was in my name only. One of the few smart decisions I'd made before this marriage went sideways. Lily May was still sleeping when I lifted her from her crib. She stirred a little, made that soft baby noise that always melted my heart, then settled against my shoulder. I carried her through the house I'd called home for 3 years, past the kitchen where I'd made 1,000 dinners Brent barely noticed, past the living room where he'd watch TV while I did all the night feedings, past the nursery with the heater that had never been fixed. I strapped her into her car seat. She stayed asleep. Perfect baby. Always had been. Before I left, I went back inside one more time. I walked to our bedroom and placed my wedding ring on Brent's pillow. The ring he'd proposed with 4 years ago, back when I believed he was capable of putting someone else first. I didn't want it anymore. It represented a promise he'd never kept. On the kitchen counter, I left the divorce papers, all 47 pages of them, and on top, a single yellow sticky note. "You can't catch a wife and release her. Read page 14. I thought it was clever. Fishing humor. He'd appreciate it eventually. Or he wouldn't. Either way, I laughed when I wrote it. First time I'd laughed in months. By 5:45 a.m., I was on Route 81 North, heading towards Scranton. 70 miles to my mother's house, 70 miles to safety, 70 miles to the beginning of whatever came next. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the Pennsylvania hills in shades of orange and pink. Lily May slept in the back seat. The radio played softly, some old song from the 80s that I didn't recognize, but found comforting anyway. I drove exactly the speed limit. No need to attract attention. No need to rush. Brent wouldn't be home for another 15 hours. By then, I'd be settled in my childhood bedroom, drinking tea with my mother, watching my daughter sleep in the portable crib we'd set up days ago. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. Now I just had to wait. Brent got home at 8:23 p.m. I know because Gerald's truck has Jeep's tracking, something Brent mentioned once years ago, and I filed away in my memory. He pulled into the driveway at 8:19. 4 minutes to unload his gear and walk inside. I can imagine what he found. Dark house, empty rooms, silence where there should have been a baby crying or a wife asking about his day, the papers on the counter, the sticky note. I imagine him reading that note, confused at first, then flipping to page 14 where Patricia had itemized every single withdrawal from our joint account, $67,340, listed by date and amount. Page 15, the boat purchase with copies of the receipt and registration. Page 16, his 50% ownership of Holloway Pipe and Fixture and his personal liability for the company's $134,000 in tax debt. Page 17, my claim to the down payment and house equity. His hands must have been shaking by the time he finished. At 8:47 p.m., my phone screen lit up. Brent calling. I didn't answer. Straight to voicemail. 8:48 p.m. Brent calling, voicemail. 8:49 p.m. Text message. Babe, what is this? Where are you? 8:52 p.m. Brent calling, voicemail. 8:55 p.m. Text. This is crazy. Let's talk about this. Come home, 9:03 p.m. Text. I know I messed up. We can fix this, please. 9:15 p.m. Brent calling. The 17th call in less than 30 minutes. Voicemail. By midnight, he'd called 47 times. I knew because I checked the log the next morning. 47 calls to a number I'd blocked at 6 a.m. that morning, right after I crossed the Scranton city limits. Some people say forgiveness is letting go of anger. I say blocking someone's number is letting go of their ability to annoy you. Same energy, faster results. Sunday morning, Gerald drove to my mother's house. I watched from the upstairs window as his truck pulled up, as he marched to the front door, as he pounded on it with his fist. Colleen answered. My mother, 5'4", 63 years old, retired school nurse. Not someone you'd expect to be intimidating, but she stood in that doorway like a fortress. I couldn't hear what Gerald said, but I could imagine. Demands to see me, accusations, maybe threats. Colleen's response was calm and clear. I heard every word through the open window. My daughter and granddaughter are resting. You can leave now, or I can call the police. Your choice. She didn't raise her voice, didn't need to. Gerald stood there for a long moment, probably trying to figure out how to bully a woman who clearly wasn't going to be bullied. Then he turned around and drove away. He wasn't used to women who didn't back down. He was about to meet a lot more of them. The next few months unfolded exactly as Patricia had predicted. Without my income covering the mortgage, the house payments fell behind immediately. Brent missed August, missed September. By October, the bank had sent foreclosure warnings. The house he'd prioritized fishing trips over was slipping through his fingers. Meanwhile, Patricia's forensic accountant had torn through Holloway Pipe and Fixture's books and found clear evidence of tax fraud going back 3 years. As an officer of the court, Patricia was required to report suspected fraud to the appropriate authorities. She did so in late August. By October, the IRS had opened an investigation. By November, they'd frozen Gerald's business accounts pending a full audit. The dominoes were falling. September brought depositions, under oath, on the record. Patricia deposed both Brent and Gerald separately. Brent's deposition was pathetic. He couldn't explain where the money had gone. He claimed he didn't know about the tax debt. He said his father had handled all the business finances. He threw Gerald under the bus at every opportunity while somehow still defending him. It was like watching a man try to save a sinking ship by drilling more holes in the hull. But Gerald's deposition was the real show. His attorney had clearly advised him to protect himself, to minimize his own liability, to put distance between himself and the financial disaster he'd created. Patricia asked him about the money transfers from our joint account. Gerald said he'd asked Brent for help. Brent offered. He didn't force anyone to do anything. Patricia asked if he knew the money belonged to both Brent and me. Gerald said Brent handles his own household. That's not my business. Then Patricia asked about his influence over Brent, about the daily phone calls, about the texts calling me that woman, about the Saturday fishing trips that took priority over everything else in Brent's life. Gerald paused, looked at his lawyer, looked at Brent, who was sitting in the corner of the room, watching his father testify, and then Gerald said the words that ended their relationship forever. Brent's always been easily led. He's too weak to say no to anyone. That's his problem, not mine. I wasn't in the room, but Patricia told me about it later. She said Brent's face went pale, said he looked like someone had punched him in the stomach, said he finally saw his father for what he really was. But it was too late. 3 years too late for me. A lifetime too late for Brent. The divorce was finalized in November, 4 months after I filed. Patricia got me everything she'd promised. The down payment reimbursement, my share of the house equity, full legal and physical custody of Lily May, child support of $1,100 per month, automatically deducted from Brent's paycheck. Brent got supervised visitation 1 Saturday a month, supervised, at a facility with social workers present, because the court reviewed his pattern of behavior, the documented absences, the prioritizing of leisure over parental responsibility, the financial deception, and determined he could not be trusted with unsupervised access to his own daughter. The fishing trips that were so sacred, so unmissable, so important that he'd left his wife in labor to attend them, they're exactly what cost him real time with Lily May. I need to tell you about the phone call, the one from the title. That first Saturday night, July 27th, 2 hours after Brent found the papers, his 48th call of the evening. Except this time, before I blocked his number, I let it go to voicemail just to hear what he'd say. He was crying, actually crying, sobbing. I'd never heard him cry before, not in 4 years together, not even at his grandfather's funeral. Please, Destiny, please come home. I was wrong. About everything. I'll change. I swear I'll change. I'll skip fishing. I'll be a real husband, a real father. Please, just give me another chance. I can't do this without you. I listened to that voicemail once, then I deleted it. I thought about responding for about 3 seconds. Then I remembered the text message he'd sent while our daughter's heart rate was dropping. Dad says the bass are really biting today. Keep me posted. I blocked his number. I never answered again. Hey, if this story has meant something to you, I'd be so grateful if you'd hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support means more than you know. It really helps me keep making these stories for you. Thank you, truly, from the bottom of my heart. Now let me tell you how this all turned out. The house sold in January. Foreclosure auction. It went for less than market value, $262,000. But after the mortgage was paid off and Patricia extracted my settlement, I walked away with $78,000. That included my $35,000 down payment, my share of the remaining equity, and a few additional adjustments the court approved based on Brent's documented financial deception. The boat? Brent had been making loan payments for about a year, so the balance was down to around $19,000. When he couldn't keep up with payments after the divorce, the court ordered it sold. When at auction for $31,000, boats depreciate fast. After the loan payoff, about $12,000 remained. I got my half, $6,000. Not much, but it felt like justice. That boat he bought, instead of fixing our daughter's nursery heater, ended up paying for her new crib. Child support started flowing in December, $1,100 a month, automatically deducted from Brent's paycheck before he even sees it. He can't hide from it, can't forget to pay. Can't claim he doesn't have the money. It just happens, like clockwork, every 2 weeks. $550 deposited into my account. The most reliable Brent has ever been about anything. I moved to Scranton permanently in January. Found a 3-bedroom townhouse about 15 minutes from my mother. Used $15,000 of my settlement for the security deposit, furniture, and an emergency fund. Invested $40,000 in index funds for long-term security, something my grandmother always preached about, putting money somewhere it could grow. I call the remaining savings my never depend on anyone again account. It's earning 4.5% interest. My ex-husband never earned my interest in anything. In March, I got promoted. Senior billing specialist at a larger medical practice in Scranton, working for a woman named Claudia who raised 3 kids as a single mom. She gets it. The salary is $58,000 a year plus benefits. Not rich, but comfortable, stable, mine. Lily May is 18 months old now. She's walking, talking, well, babbling mostly, but I swear she said mama last week and my heart nearly exploded. She has my eyes and, unfortunately, Brent's nose, but that's the only thing of his she's getting. Everything else, the values, the strength, the understanding that she deserves to be someone's priority, That's coming from me and my mother and my sister, the women who showed up, the women who stayed. As for Brent, he lost the house, he lost the boat, he lost unsupervised access to his daughter. He lost any respect I ever had for him. After the foreclosure, he moved into a rented room above his father's shop, the shop Gerald no longer owns. The IRS investigation concluded in February. Gerald had to sell Holloway pipe and fixture to cover the back taxes, the penalties, and the interest. He works for the new owners now as a regular employee, takes orders from a 32-year-old named Kyle, who calls him Jerry, and makes him clean the warehouse on Fridays. Brent's supervised visitation with Lily May is scheduled for one Saturday a month. In the 6 months since the divorce was finalized, he's shown up for exactly 2 of them. The other 4 times, he canceled. Always has an excuse: car trouble, work emergency, not feeling well. Same pattern, different context. And those sacred Saturday fishing trips, the ones that couldn't be missed for anything, not for a wedding, not for a funeral, not for the birth of a child. Gerald told Brent he's too busy now, has to work weekends at the warehouse because Kyle needs him there. Funny how that works. Funny how the thing Brent sacrificed his marriage for has disappeared completely. Funny how Gerald's priorities shifted the moment they became inconvenient for Gerald. I'd feel sorry for Brent if I had any sympathy left, but I used it all up on that drive to the hospital, breathing through contractions, wondering why I wasn't worth 12 minutes of delay on a fishing trip. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was at the Wegmans on Route 6, doing my weekly grocery shopping. Lily May was in the cart chewing on a teething ring and charming everyone who walked by. We just grabbed some bananas when I turned the corner into the cereal aisle. Brent was standing there. He looked older, tired, thinner, like life had been chewing on him the way Lily May was chewing on that teething ring. He was holding a box of generic cornflakes, the store brand, not even the real Kellogg's, and staring at the price like it personally offended him. He saw me at the same moment I saw him. His face went through about 6 emotions in 3 seconds: surprise, shame, hope, desperation, regret. Something that might have been love once, but had curdled into something else. Destiny, he said. His voice cracked. I want to say I waited. Not because I wanted to hear it, but because I'd earned the right to watch him struggle. I'm sorry, he finally managed. I was wrong about everything. My dad, the money, the fishing, leaving you at the hospital, all of it. I was so stupid. I see that now. I didn't know. I didn't understand what I was throwing away. I looked at him for a long moment. This man I'd married. This man I'd believed in. This man who'd chosen a fishing trip over the birth of his daughter, who'd stolen $67,000 from our future, who'd let his father call me that woman without ever defending me once. I thought about all the things I could say, all the anger I could unleash, all the years of frustration and disappointment and betrayal that I could pour out right there in the cereal aisle of a Scranton Wegmans. But here's the thing I've learned about revenge. The best revenge isn't making someone suffer. It's moving on so completely that their suffering becomes irrelevant to you. So I didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing that he still had any power over my emotions. I just looked at him, smiled slightly, and said, "I hope you catch something worth keeping someday, Brent." Then I pushed my cart past him, grabbed a box of Cheerios for Lily May, and kept walking. I paid for my groceries, loaded them into my car, drove home to my townhouse where my mother was making dinner, and my daughter's toys were scattered across the living room floor, and my life was messy and imperfect and entirely my own. I didn't look back. There's nothing behind me that I need. Some people show you who they are in small moments. Every Saturday morning for 3 years, Brent showed me exactly who he was. He showed me that his father would always come first. That tradition mattered more than commitment. That I was an afterthought in my own marriage. But he made it undeniable on one Saturday morning in March, when he chose a fishing trip over watching his daughter come into the world, when he left me in that car with contractions 6 minutes apart and told me I could handle it. He was right about one thing, though. I could handle it. I handled the hospital. I handled the labor. I handled the delivery. I handled discovering his lies, documenting his betrayal, hiring an attorney, filing for divorce, and rebuilding my entire life from the ground up. The woman who drove herself to the hospital while in labor, she can do anything. And that's the thing about being underestimated. When someone assumes you're weak, they never see you coming. They never prepare for you to fight back. They're too busy looking at the lake to notice the storm rolling in. So here's what I've learned, and maybe it's useful to someone out there listening to this story. When someone shows you they'll never put you first, believe them. Don't make excuses. Don't hope they'll change. Don't convince yourself that love is enough. Believe them the first time, the 10th time, the 100th time, and then make the only decision that really matters. Put yourself first, because nobody else is going to do it for you. Thank you so much for staying with me through this whole story. I'm genuinely grateful for every single one of you who made it to the end. If you want to hear more stories like this one, there's another one waiting for you right there on your screen. I picked it out just for you. I think you're going to love it. I'll see you in the next one.